Welcome back to the Delaware Way. I'm Larry Menti. I'm proud to introduce you to Stephen Marz, who is the director of Delaware Public Archives and the state archivist. Let's start with, what is an archivist? What is a state archivist?
Well, I'll start with what an archivist is. An archivist is someone who's trained in the care and preservation of documents of enduring value. And what the state archivist is, there's one in every state, and we are the guardians of the historic and public documents of enduring value for the state, in this case, state of Delaware.
Why is that important?
It's important that you have the documented history of what happens in a state, whether it's from a historical perspective or public documents, because that's the framework of how you document decisions that are being made or information that's been received. And it's critical that people have access to that information so they can either do their historic research or just generally want to know something.
That is the part that fascinated me, that not only do you have these archives that are historical archives, are valuable archives, but that everyone is able to go in and take a look at these. So you welcome the public.
Absolutely. One of our major philosophies at the Delaware Public Archives is to have people come in. Come and see us, or go to our website. Many of our documents are digitized and you can access them via the web. We have over 10.4 million documents, over 800,000 photographs, and over 25,000 audio medium types of recordings that people can access and look at. For Delawareans, if you were born, went to school, got married, owned property, if you hit that last chapter, you die, eventually your records are going to be in the Delaware Public Archives.
So I go in there, let's just say I'm a student, I'm at the University of Delaware, I'm doing a state project, and I'm doing a school project, and I need information that may be in the Delaware Archives. I'm doing a story on the history of Delaware. I have access to everything in there?
You have access to the materials that are going to be related to whatever you're studying, unless they're restricted. And mostly times they deal with personnel types of actions in that regard. But we have a whole cadre of information that's available to you. Come and see us.
No, I will. I saw the building. I saw a picture online of the building, and we can show it now. Is this building in itself historic?
The building is a brand new building, part of it. The original building was built in the 1930s during the WPA administrations, and the new part of the building was added about 15 years ago. The Delaware Public Archives is one of 3 of the oldest public archives in the nation. And this building, because we've outgrown it, at that time, 15 years ago, they built a brand new addition to it. Your public archives in Delaware is one of the more secure buildings in the state of Delaware.
Now, why is that? You talked a little bit about this before we went on the air, about the security there. Why the security?
Because of the historic and public documents that are contained in that building. That's why it's secure. And you want to make sure that as the archivist, the state archivist, that as guardian, I want to make sure there's good stewardship of these materials so that they'll be there for the next generation, and generations to come to use.
I made the mistake before we went on of asking you about valuable materials, and you said all the documents are valuable. But let's talk about what you have in there that is historically significant, that may get some money on the open market.
Well, if anyone tried to remove our royal charter, first of all, they'd have to get past me, and I don't think that's going to happen. But when we have the royal charter that was signed by Charles II to his brother, the Duke of York, that actually was the document that initiated the land holdings that incorporated Delaware at that time. We also have our ratification document. Our ratification, that's why we're called the first state. We were the first state to ratify the Constitution, and we have a copy of that document.
When you have documents that are this old, and the charter document, how far does that date back to?
That dates back to the early 1700s. We have documents that go back to the mid-1600s.
Right, when people were first coming over. How do you take care of them? How do you make it so they don't crumble? Because I know even at the National Archives they've had problems with some of the national documents.
Well, what you do is we have 9 major vaults within our facility that are temperature and relative humidity controlled.
You bring these documents out, the couple that you talked about. It's not just the security of somebody coming in and possibly taking these documents, which isn't going to happen, but it is safeguarding that that the heat and the elements and the light doesn't degrade them even more.
Absolutely. In the past, not for Delaware, but let's take from the National Archives. In the past, many years ago, people would like an historic document on their wall. Let's say you were the vice president or you were some official, and many times the archives would let them borrow that and it would go up on the wall. And when you have, just like in your house, if you have a photograph or a picture that gets sunlight on it, it starts to become lighter and lighter. Eventually there's no picture there. It just goes away. And that's what happens with some of the historic documents in the past. That's a practice that's been out of the books for many, 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 many years.
Okay, this is a wonderful resource that I'm sorry that I was naive about, even that all states had a state archive, and it is worth the trip. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the specifics, what you're going to see when you go there, how you get there, and some of the special events coming up when we continue with Stephen Marz, the director of the Delaware Public Archives.